12 News is taking a look at the District 1 congressional race, and you can see it there in the pink. It's a huge area, includes parts of North Phoenix, Scottsdale, Fountain Hills, Carefree, and others. So we've reached out to the Republican incumbent in this district, David Schweikert. We're talking with him, but we've not yet been able to schedule an interview with him. We will have him on soon. Today we are talking to his Democratic opponent, Amish Shah. Dr. Shah, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
You were a busy man leading up to winning your primary. It was a crowded race. You had 5 opponents, and you said you knocked on some doors.
I knocked on 22,000 doors in all of my time, and it was an honor to be able to go to those folks and speak to them directly and listen to their concerns.
And you're not a newcomer to Arizona politics, so you had 3 terms in the legislature.
Correct.
And you say that you were more successful passing bills than any other Democrat in the last 10 years. Why do you think that was? I
went down there with the idea of building relationships with Democrats, with Republicans, House and Senate. So it was almost my first order of business when I got down there to go sit down with them and find out where we can work together. And I continued to do that all throughout my time.
And you said it wasn't that difficult if you set your mind to it. Explain that to me.
So it's about taking the time to get to know some of those folks and the districts that they represent. What are the issues that are important to them and where we can find some policy agreement. And it turns out, yeah, the Republicans in particular. And it turned out there were many places. So I had 12 bills signed into law over those years, and it was more than any other Democrat in a decade.
So let's say you win this race. We'll project forward. You're going to be a freshman congressman. It's tough to get on committees. You know, it's hard. Day one, month one, what's your priority if you get to Washington?
I've got a few policy areas that I really care about. So healthcare has always been on my mind. I'm an emergency physician. I'm sure you know that I've been practicing for about 20 years.
And are you going to keep practicing, by the way, or is this going to be a full-time job?
That's a really good question. They have a rule in the United States House that you may not have an outside source of income other than the practice of medicine.
Oh,
and so it's the one profession where you might be able to do it. And fortunately, I have an employer right in the heart of the district that is very supportive. So we'll see about that. But I enjoy the practice of medicine. I get to see patients and also get to hear what is going on within the healthcare system. So it drives me, this idea of reforming the healthcare system so that people get covered, costs come down, is important. The quality that we want in healthcare is maintained. I think these things are really important to me. A couple of the other things that are really important, education. I've talked about that for the last 7 years. We have to make sure the teachers are well paid because a lot of them are leaving. There's a very high attrition rate.
So a couple of the issues that Democrats are polling lower than Republicans are in the state, let's hit a couple of those. Immigration and the border. What would you do about that? It's a mess. I feel like we've been talking about it for 30 years. It's broken policy down there. Yeah. How would you fix that?
The border's in crisis, right? And we have to secure it. You cannot have fentanyl coming across. That's one big thing that I really would love to try to work on down there. How
would you do that? Are you for the fence?
So one of the things I did over the last, in my time in the legislature is I was the only Democrat who voted for a bill to make sure that the threshold for felonies for fentanyl came down. And that was really important because what I see as an emergency physician are people who overdose. And we can't have that. Also, my district, my legislative district, had an area in it where we saw a lot of fentanyl abuse. So that's got to get curbed.
So how would that happen? Give me a for instance.
So one of the big things that Congress does is appropriate money. Okay. And we know that. So a lot of what we can do is direct more resources at the border. So I've called for more funding for border security. I've called for the ports, the asylum system has a real problem in that there's a lot of abuse of it. So
10% of those asylum claims, from what I understand, get approved. The other 90%, they just kind of are out there.
And so a few months ago, you may have noticed the Biden administration did do something about this and did kind of shut things down. I would like to continue that as well as use that bipartisan framework that actually Senator Sinema had put together as a starting point and hopefully work with the other party and get something done on this.
Dr. Amish Shah, good talking with you. Good luck going forward.
Well.
For several weeks, 12 News has been breaking down each of the races. Today, we're taking a look at the District 1 congressional race. It includes parts of North Phoenix, Scottsdale, Fountain Hills, and Carefree. A couple of weeks ago, Democratic candidate Amish Shah joined us in studio, and this afternoon, we have Republican incumbent David Schweikert here. Thank you so much for being in studio with us. You've been serving in D.C. well over a decade now, since that first congressional district win back in 2010. We won't go way back then. We certainly do want to look forward. But, you know, in that time, we've consistently heard voters talking about the economy, more so lately, jobs, cost of living. So if reelected, how do you make housing more affordable? How do we bring down grocery prices?
It's actually a brilliant question. And look, I'm blessed to be number 4 in Ways and Means. And it takes a decade to get that ranking. And I also chair the Republican side of what's called the Joint Economic Committee. Now, that's all geeky, but it means you actually have some influence on trying to do crazy things like, what would it take to bring more housing to market? So we're doing a whole study with our economists for legislation in the beginning of the year, saying if there's government pieces of land, how do we turn them into the next subdivision, the next community, the next place to have homes?
Right, because there's a lot of people talking about all the federal land that's available, but the problem is there's no grocery stores there. We already live in food deserts, so how do you make those places more livable once you obtain that land?
But you run into the chicken and egg problem of if we have a shortage of housing stock. And understand, it's much bigger than just traditional federal land. It's BLM land, Forest Service land. There's even Bureau of Reclamation land, state trust land. And you've heard the Vice President, others talk about the stress, but the ultimate solution is you need more homes, and we need a place to build them.
Absolutely. We do want to talk about this because we're in week 1, almost done with week 1 in October. We're flirting with 110 every single day, breaking records. So what needs to be done to keep summers from getting longer and hotter and more miserable, because no one's going to want to live here if this continues?
It's actually a brilliant question. Being the idiot that's out there knocking on doors and sometimes having my little kids with me, it's brutal. Particularly for those of us in the Phoenix area, we also have this additional thing they call the heat dome effect. Yes. I think it's not partisan, but we need to actually engage in some crazy technology ideas. The reflective surfaces on the roofs, air conditioners that actually dump their heat into the water heater instead of pumping it out into your neighborhood. There's actually dozens of these things that are being studied by ASU and other places.
Yeah, a lot of universities taking on the heat island effect and the non-cooling overnight.
And we should actually, and in many ways, they would actually lower our bills.
Okay, and that's what everybody wants.
And there's some new technology we think coming out on air conditioners that also could crash the price of electricity they use.
Okay, so see, we want to see some more of that, lower prices there. Also, we want to talk about, I'm glad you brought up partisan, because bipartisan work needs to be done, obviously. People are completely divided, more so even now after the recent assassination attempts on former President Donald Trump. Will civility wedge its way back into politics at some point?
It's a good question. Look, I'm blessed. If you're in Congressional District 1, you're in one of the highest educated districts in America. And I find actually the tone in this one is you have a population that wants to be treated like adults. They want to be spoken to with actual details, not platitudes. But I do see some of the dopamine hits that come through media, come through the politicians, that are feeding people, and sometimes for emotion, and sometimes to raise money, and not actually solutions.
And that is one thing we want. We want solution-based policies. I think most people would agree with that. Lastly, while I've got you here, we have a growing number of independent voters. As a Republican and the incumbent, how are you appealing to those who are undecided as we sit 32 days away from Election Day?
Look, most people don't realize independents are now the #1 registration in Arizona. And it's how I've been blessed to get reelected. We're blessed. We do well with independence.
Okay. Well, best of luck in November. And thank you for coming into the studio. I know your daughter's here, and I hope that housing drops by the time she's ready to start up that mortgage. You know what I mean?
You joke. We actually talk about things like that.
We need it to happen.
To the next generation?